Oh, that would be fine. Then we can go for ice cream, right?
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Janet Hanson, Chair of the Historic Site Preservation Board. It's 5:30 and I'm calling this board meeting to order. It's my gavel. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Hanson,
Present.
Vice Chair Bachman,
Present.
Member Hare,
Here.
Member Vanessa,
Here.
and we have two excused absences for Member McCready and Member Moshkevich. But we do have four.
Okay. May we have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
The agenda for this meeting was posted for public review in the required locations in accordance to the city's policies.
Okay. Do any board members have revisions to the agenda, including requests to remove items on the consent calendar for further discussion? Looks good. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve.
And is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Board Member Payanesa and a second by Board Member Hare. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. Do we say two absences or we don't need to? Okay. We're moving on to public comment. I did want to ask if anyone in the audience, I think most of you are here for the public hearing item. If you did want to speak on that item, we have speaker slips over here that you can fill out and then turn them into Sarah, and then we will take that testimony during the public hearing a little bit later in the meeting. But for now, we're going to move on to public comment. This time has been assigned for members of the public to address the board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There'll be 3 minutes assigned to each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken later in the meeting, as I mentioned, and I do not have any speaker slips. Is there anyone in the audience that did want to speak during this time? And is there anyone online who wishes to speak?
Nobody online has their hand raised.
All right. We'll now close the public comment period and proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar, which is the minutes from the draft minutes from the April 7th meeting. Does anyone have comments on the draft minutes? All right, may I have a motion to approve the April minutes on the consent calendar?
I move.
Okay, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion by Board Member Hare and a second by Board Member Bachman. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 4-0. We're now moving on to public hearings. Today we have one public hearing item that is an applicant-initiated request for historic site designation of the Temple Isaiah located at 322 West Alejo Road, assessor parcel number 505-313-007, case number HSPB 173. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes. Sorry. The application before the board today is a request for historic designation of the Temple Isaiah located at 322 West Alejo Road. It is initiated by the owners of the site, and this is case number HSPB 173. The Temple Isaiah is located on a 3.3 acre lot that was initially developed in 1952. It is surrounded by residential development around the north and east side of the property. The O'Donnell Golf Course is to the south, and Wellwood Murray Cemetery is to the west. The photographs on the screen show the current condition of the property today. As you can see, the main focus of the structure, it has a monolithic appearance that stretches across the lot with a unifying architectural design and form that seems to directly react to the context of the site. As indicated in the report, the site embodies multiple design phases, and this current configuration was completed in the 1980s remodel. The photo on the far right shows an angle of the building that actually captures the massing of the original 1950s design. Here's a photograph of the Lieberman Chapel, which is the original sanctuary space designed and completed in 1952 by E. Stewart Williams. Although the HSPB does not have interior purview, it is apt to point out that the original modernist features, including the concrete structural bracing elements and the wood detailing, remain intact. The photo on the right is a historic photograph of the Temple Isaiah following its completion before the courtyard space was filled in the 1950s. Here you can see the iconic massing and the Star of David detailing on the main elevation. So to provide a little bit more context and clarity, the site plan shown here is from the 1980s remodel set that was submitted to the city. Here you get a better sense of the site and the scale of the expansion. The existing building at the northeast corner of the site remains, and it wasn't incorporated as part of the temple building. And the original temple structure was encased and added onto, with the massing expanding towards the west. This slide shows the original temple structure in blue and the David Christian expansion in light orange. The report does indicate that the original temple, again, was encapsulated in the stucco finish and continues the form of the new addition to read as a single comprehensive design. So in reviewing the criteria for designation, the site goes through three principal phases as a designated gathering space for the Jewish community in Palm Springs. It has been the social and cultural center for the community for the past 75 years. The site captures the post-war period as a distinctive site that has evolved through each significant design phase, starting its life as a modernist vision of a religious building, and the last design phase of the temple exemplifies late modern and brutalist features. The design of the temple also reflects the genius of significant architects like E. Stewart Williams, Wexler, and then the current redesign of the temple demonstrates a high level of artistic value. When it comes to the integrity findings of the existing site, the predominant features on the buildings is seen from the last phase, which was completed in the 1980s. The original location, the setting, its association are all consistent and respected throughout every phase of the change. And staff does find that the necessary levels of integrity are present and justify the criterion listed before. The report goes into immense detail describing every aspect of the existing structure, its overall massing, its form, the materials, the finish, and character-defining features. These are listed both in the report and in the draft resolution. This is a layout of kind of the exterior description. It goes into, again, more detail about the fenestration and glazing and the information that is part of the report, the site features, the context, and it goes into the landscaping features. And again, although it's not part of the HSPB's purview, important features of the interior, including the surviving elements of the E. Stewart Williams portion of the sanctuary, has been listed in detail. So with that, the Temple Isaiah nomination does meet criterions 1, 3, and 5 and meets the necessary integrity findings to be classified as a Class 1 landmark site. Again, we'd like to iterate that this is an applicant-initiated designation request, and staff is recommending that HSPB recommend Class 1 designation to the City Council. I can take any questions related to the staff report, We do have the writer of the report present along with the constituents of the applicants here as well.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for staff?
I have some questions. I'm just not sure whether.
Could you, I think some of the people in the audience are having trouble hearing.
Yes.
So maybe if we could speak up a little?
I have some questions, but I'm not sure whether this is the appropriate time to bring them up or not.
Are they associated with
They're-
the staff report? Or is
Yes,
it-
yes, with some of them with the staff report, yes. Okay, so the sort of major question is that the recommendation here, the draft resolution as written, if we would approve that, we would be asking the city, if we would recommend it, we would be asking the city council to approve a draft resolution that includes aspects that we have no purview over, and I'm just wondering how the city attorney proved that. It seems like a disconnect to me.
So in the details of the character defining features, I believe we indicate that interior features and spatial arrangements are identified as significant but fall out of the purview of HSPB and staff. So we do define that in section 3, just to provide some clarity. We did want to provide the interior features or identify them as character defining, but make a note that it is outside of HSPB purview.
Well, I did read that, but it also seemed to me that this was the first time we have ever done this, although we have had the same situation in previous designations.
So we've had this come up, maybe not to this level of detail, where we have included interior features with a note saying it's not part of the purview, but we wanted to acknowledge that it was an important character defining feature. So we have done that in the past, and of course, the resolution will need to abide by the overall historic preservation ordinance, where we don't have purview over interiors unless it's specific public buildings.
I think we, at the last few meetings, we've actually had some precedent for including interior features. I think, as Sarah suggested, it wasn't in as much detail, but I think it's important information to include in the resolution should alterations be proposed in the future. It also gives the property owner important information that these are features that should be considered when alterations are happening, even though we wouldn't have purview, but you know, it's important information for the property owners.
Well, and that is all included in the report, so that
Yes.
is there for the
Yes.
historic record.
I don't personally have a problem with it. I think Sarah's explanation was adequate for me.
Of course, the resolution that's presented is a draft, and so of course, the HSPB does have, the
Yeah.
ability to edit the
Well,
draft.
that's why I'm asking
Yes.
the questions, yes.
Do you have other questions for Sarah?
Yes, but I think they probably come up more under the discussion when we're talking about specifics within the draft resolution.
Does anyone else have any questions for Sarah before we go to the applicant team?
Not for Sarah, no.
You're good for now? All right. Is the applicant team here today, and would they like to provide any comments regarding the application? And if you would like to, please come up to the chairs in the front. State your name and affiliation for us, please. You can both come up.
No, I'm Stephen Keel, I'm Vice President of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation, and I was the author of the report.
And I'm Robert Weinstein. I'm the president of the Temple Isaiah presently.
So did you just want to take questions, or
Let's
do you
take
have
questions, and then
statements?
I think the staff report really said everything.
Uh-huh.
And you have the nomination, so you have the information.
You do.
So I'm really here to offer full support for this and answer any questions.
I just wanted to, if it's okay, I just wanted to add a couple of things. I've been active in the temple for the past 10 years. And 10 years ago, there was a situation where the temple was in the board at that point tried to sell the temple to a developer, but that fell through. I contacted Harold Matzner to put a stop to it. He came in and he helped me stop the sale to a developer and keep it going as a temple. Ever since then, I haven't been in a position to try to preserve the temple as a historic preservation until recently, and that's when the board and I got together and tried to preserve the temple. Thanks to phenomenal job done by Steve and his research, but we want to make sure the temple will be there for future generations. It's not only open to the Jewish community, it's open to the entire community. It's a community center. We have churches in our temple. Sometimes there's, we're open to the entire community. And our community as a congregation is very diverse. The temple was originally founded in the late 40s by between 50 and 100 concentration camp survivors. Their stories are written in a booklet that's in the hallway, and you can actually see it there. Each person who contributed to the temple is in a booklet in the hallway, and this is their contribution to the community. Many of the people were famous, such as Bob Fay's father, Jack Fay, who started the whole condominium situation. He's the one that created condominiums. When he came to City Hall, he tried to get a condo complex created, and no one even knew what a condo was. They wanted the spelling of the word. So the membership is historical. This building was started by around 100 concentration camp survivors, people that survived Auschwitz and Birkenau and a whole bunch of Treblinka, and it's all listed in that book. The main sanctuary was assisted by Frank Sinatra, who helped pay for the creation of the main sanctuary. And sorry about that. And the main sanctuary is also, we have treasures in there from Jacob Agam. It's the only one in the world where he's created an actual temple or a building, because normally he does kinetic artwork on canvas or on paper, but he's created an actual temple with varying colors. So if you look at the pews, you can actually see a kinetic difference in the seats. And if you look up at the Ark, where the Torah scrolls are located, the Ark is actually multi-layered different colors, which is part of the kinetic artwork that he's famous for. Plus, he's contributed a whole bunch of art that we have all around the walls inside. Again, the original temple was built in 49 to 50, and we have a lot of mid-century artifacts in that portion of the sanctuary and the temple, and the entire complex is like a treasure trove of history, and so that's why I said let's preserve this for generations to come. Let's not take any chances, 20, 30, 40 years from now when future generations come. We want to make sure it's still there. We don't want to see a condominium complex in that complex or a hotel. We want to make sure it's there for the community, for future generations to enjoy, because there's nothing like it anywhere in the world.
All right. Thank you. I think we'll open the public hearing, but then we'll call you back during our deliberations if we have questions. Does that sound? Okay. So you can go ahead and have a seat, and we'll probably be chatting with you in a little while. Okay. I'm going to now open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in the public comment period on this item? No one?
I'll say a word.
Okay. Like, we're going to give you a speaker slip because we need to have it on record. You can fill it out. You can come up and then fill it out after you're done, and then hand it to
I'll be
Sarah.
short and sweet.
Yeah, but same thing, please state your name and your affiliation, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Michael Frederick. I'm the Vice President of Temple Isaiah. I've been a member since 1995. I moved here from Los Angeles, actually from the Valley, after the Northridge earthquake. And I came here when this community was really nothing at the time. There was really nothing to do. I made a large investment here by buying apartment buildings and houses and all kinds of stuff, and just kind of felt that this was going to be my home forever. I joined the temple for one reason. I had a 2-year-old son. I had nowhere to go, and it had a phenomenal school that had a lot of our top surgeons and lawyers and doctors that were there, and they made me feel part of the family. And I stayed there and watched my son grow there. And that school that's there now is not a temple school. It's for everybody, and it's a very important school that needs to stay there for the community because it educates a lot of kids. And again, as Robert said, the temple is a community effort. It's just not for the Jewish community, it's for all of the community, whether it's the church, whether it's for quinceaneras. It just gives the community a place to go. The lovely part about it, because part of me is Hollywood, and I run the Palm Springs Jewish Film Festival. And I took it over about 5 years ago. It was just a small film festival, and now it's the top 10 in the entire country. And we have thousands of people that attend. I bring in major celebrities, directors, and producers that are even more than the Palm Springs International Film Festival. And we bring in people of all faiths there. And I do a lot of films really in English, so everybody can enjoy it. And I started with 1 or 2 days, and now we're up to 6 days with parties and, like I said, major celebrities that come in for me that are happy to embrace our community here. And it grows every year, and it grows every year. And I will continue doing that to keep our community together. Also, I've at the temple, being a member, I've been there with many celebrities. I remember on the high holidays sitting with Elizabeth Taylor and holding her dog. So, I mean, there's so much history with this temple. And if it goes, what are we going to put there, really? What are we going to put there? Condos, hotels? I think we're beyond that. I think this temple is historical. It needs to survive, it needs to sustain. We need to have that school there. We need to have services there for churches and the Jewish community and anything else we can do because it is a community spot. Just like our film festival, it is for community. It's just not for the Jewish community. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Anyone else would like to speak during the public hearing? Come on up, state your name and affiliation, please. You have 3 minutes. Sarah, are you keeping time?
Hi, my name is Susan Missner, and although I've only been a member of Temple Isaiah officially for maybe 2 years, I've actually been going to Temple Isaiah since I was 8 years old, and I'm 72 years old now, because I would visit my very beloved grandfather, my grandparents out here from Chicago every winter break. So I go back, what is that? You guys do the math, 60-some years with this building and this site and this property and O'Donnell Golf Course, because I'm a golfer, and have been since childhood, and that whole neighborhood. bring it completely current, I'm also very active as a project coordinator with Modernism Week. So for me, this building and this site and the building in the context of its neighborhood is really quite extraordinary from all those perspectives. And each part of this building I've experienced really firsthand, not only as a temple goer with my grandfather through the years, etc., but even more recently as a Montessori parent. Montessori is very close to my heart, and one of the tenants in this building is the Montessori School, which is a tenant in the original piece of the building designed by E. Stuart Williams. And visiting that portion of the building, experiencing each of these phases, I guess is what I'm trying to say, each of these different phases of the architecture and the design of this complex is, as I say, just really unique. And for me, it brought the submission very much alive. So, thank you for the time.
Thank you.
And for your consideration of the exhibition. I leave this here?
Actually,
Oh,
if you filled it out, go ahead and
Yeah.
hand it to Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry.
All right, last call. Anybody else? All right. Do we have anyone online who wants to speak on the item?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, seeing no further speakers, I will close the public hearing, and now the action is with the board. Who would like to start?
You're looking at me?
Oh, not necessarily, you were looking at me.
All right, I was. I'm happy to start. I've admired this building for many, many years. I think I get and understand that it has a great history, definitely worth preserving. I do have a question for us in discussion. As I read through the report, listening to the staff report, it seems to me that the building has really been altered pretty significantly over the decades. And so my question for us is, those alterations seem to be, in my mind, very significant. And so would it be a better classification as a 2, not a 1, that still protects the building, but it acknowledges that the building has been altered pretty significantly over the years?
I'm ready to, if you want to, but I thought we'd maybe hear from the board members first.
Well, that's a question that came to mind as I was reading through this. The E. Stuart Williams portion, though present, is definitely not recognizable really as an E. Stuart Williams building. The more important and significant, I would say, structure is the David Christian addition, if you will, but it's not just an addition, it becomes the building. And so again, while the history is vital to the nomination and to the report, it's just what are we designating? I think it's important that we should note that when we designate this, which I hope we will, we are doing nothing. There is nothing in the terms of the Palm Springs City Ordinance that will protect anything other than the exterior or the shell of the building itself. What happens to the interior is up to the people who are in charge, the next generations. So unfortunately, and I wish we had some kind of jurisdiction, but right now we don't. So what is it we're designating is the question, my question.
Is that a question? Well, is that all your comments?
No, I have some others about landscaping
Okay,
and
but-
just what, but.
Oh, do
all
you
of
want to
that.
address that first? or
Well,
do you
maybe
wanna-
we want to finish this part
Okay.
of the discussion
Okay,
first.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't
Yeah.
want, right now, an answer. And Sarah may be able to talk about that a little bit later, too. So, Kurt, do you have?
Well, I think your point is, well, I take it and I agree. And I think that's possibly why it's more important to think in terms of the whole history, the whole arc of the organization, the community, all three or all the phases of the building, because for me, the bigger part is the cultural site. And even though we have important architects and a significant piece of architecture, I think for me, the more important part is the history of the congregation and its bigger scope in the community and the history of Palm Springs. The building, the built environment is important, but I think that's why I can allow for the East Stewart Williams isn't under our jurisdiction, but it's a part of the discussion, and various other parts like that aren't. It's not so defined architecturally, but it's defined as an organization and as a contributing cultural site.
I'm not sure I think you're conflating my previous comment with the current comment.
Okay.
In the sense that whether, my previous comment had to do strictly with just the legality of the resolution itself and how, and how confusing it is to me, even though there is this one sentence caveat that we don't have jurisdiction over the interiors, yet they are listed in the resolution. But my second comment had simply to do with the fact that when I viewed the building and I look at it, it really seems to me that the visual important architectural aspect of it is the last and final iteration.
I totally agree.
So Sarah, to answer his question, which I think is a good one, like I mentioned, I don't personally have a problem with putting the interior elements in a resolution where I think it's clear that they're not going to be under review, but I think it's really important, not just in the consultant report, but in the resolution to recognize those elements moving forward. Can you maybe address that again, Sarah, in terms of, we're designating the building and the exterior of the building and the entirety of what it is now?
Correct. So in terms of the ordinance, as it stands today, we have jurisdiction over site design, we have jurisdiction over the exterior features of the structures. But once something is internalized or if it's on the inside, unless you're a public structure with that interior kind of called out designation, there is no purview. The way that we have used our resolutions to identify or highlight certain features, and I think that there was one case where we even highlighted a feature that was demolished just to accentuate the fact that it is an important feature. If it were to come back, there wouldn't be a debate for that particular feature. For the interior features, it was more of an opportunity to acknowledge its importance to future homeowners or future owners of the site, understanding that they may not review the entire report, but they would have access to a recorded resolution.
Right.
And so it would be an easier way for them to understand that there's some importance there. And the intent behind that is providing them easy access to that information so that there isn't a overlooking of those features. If they were to come to the city, of course, with an alteration of the interiors, we wouldn't be able to stop them based on this ordinance or resolution. But we felt strong enough that that would at least give them the basis in the information to identify what is important inside. And we have included that in the past, and like I said, maybe not to this level of detail in some of the other resolutions. So if there is something that feels confusing about this particular resolution, if there's, clarification language we can put in there, or if the board feels comfortable removing certain aspects of it, I think we can entertain all of that, but that was the reasoning.
I would say that I think I understand completely what
The intent.
your intent is and what we're talking about here. It's just, it doesn't, if I were writing this, it isn't the way I would write it for clarity. And it's almost like some of this is a footnote as opposed to part of the body of the resolution. And I don't need to say any more about that. It's just simply, it doesn't feel precise to me.
I think for me, there's two elements well, first of all, let me just reiterate that we have, I think, 3 criterion that were met, Sarah?
Yeah.
And, criterion 1, which is what you were saying earlier, Kurt, really is, and even based on the public comments, associated with events that have made a meaningful contribution to the nation, state, and community. And that, by events, it doesn't mean a single event. It could, the birthplace of an important person. But events can be the occupation and use of a building over a long period of time by an important organization. So for me, criterion 1, and Sarah, you pointed out the social and cultural center of Los Angeles, absolutely 100% qualifies under criterion 1. And I think part of the discussion in both the designating report and the resolution relates to that, but also important to that, I think, is the entire construction history of the property during that time that the property was used. But getting to your point, it's part of criterion 1 in a way, but since really you don't see it from the exterior, which is all the city has purview over, I'm wondering if maybe it's possible to have 2 periods of significance. And a period of significance under criterion 1 that covers the entire history of the building. And with, that discussion of the evolution of the building over time. And actually, you don't even need to end it in the 1980s because that's that was related to the construction history. It's really more of a continuum because it's still in operation. And even like for the National Register, because it's a 50-year cutoff, they would say 50 years, but it's arbitrary. But our ordinance doesn't even have a cutoff point. So, and then potentially, I think this might get to your sort of moving things around a little bit to make a little, or maybe I'm misreading you. But under the other criterion for, the particular period of architecture, I don't know if maybe there should be more of the date of what it represents now, like the construction date in the 80s. Or is that just confusing things even more? Or we just leave it as it is, I'm fine with that too. I'm just trying to address the issue of, what exactly are we designating, and what is designated physically is a 1980s building with an important construction history over time and elements of that still present, even if only on the interior. It makes me think of a school that was recently listed in the National Register, and there was a lot of deliberation about the integrity of the school. It was built like in the teens, and then it was remodeled after the 1932 earthquake. And it really didn't look at all like the 1912 building. So in essence, it had been reconstructed. But it was still identified as eligible for the National Register for the entire history of the school, and even additions of, an auditorium. And, this type of progression of a building is not unusual for public buildings, where, whether it's a school or a church or a synagogue, where, you might have a larger population of people attending, you now have need for a school, you need a larger auditorium building. So I'm good acknowledging all of the periods of construction, and by the way, I think the report was superb. So I don't know if that clarifies anything or if I'm making things more confusing, but I'm fine with leaving it as is. But I do think that the 1982 or 84, whatever that was for that period of end date for a period of significance, should be expanded to acknowledge the entire history of the building as an important social and cultural center for Palm Springs. I think the whole, it's an unusual case. I personally think it's fascinating. And I would like the entire construction history and social cultural history incorporated into the resolution as it is.
Well, I agree that the history is important and needs to be there.
Yeah.
But when someone is looking at the building and people do go to historic designated sites and they look at this, I think what they're seeing is the Christian building. And so that's kind of where I am with that particular aspect of it. Because if someone's going to drill down further, then they're going to find out that this has a much more complex history.
And I think that's kind of what I'm struggling with, is that, as you had said earlier, the E. Stewart Williams kind of does get lost, and that it is the David Christian design, because the building really is no longer recognizable as an E. Stewart Williams.
So what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting perhaps like under criterion
Well,
1 or 3, under criterion 3, which is usually where architecture is placed, that it maybe more specifically acknowledge that what you see now is the 1980s?
well, in other words, under criterion 3, it is acknowledged that the configuration, that the contemporary design expression that reflects the late modernist brutalist design. It doesn't. I feel like it needs to. It would be clearer if it were stated that it's the David Christian iteration, as opposed to the amalgamation of these three architects.
So Sarah, would potentially like a concluding statement
Yes, precisely.
to criterion 3 in the resolution, so that it's clear that that's what's there now, that's what you see visually, and that's what's going to be under the purview of this and staff and any future board. Would that help?
I think it would.
Okay.
I mean, again, each of these added paragraphs under the criterion are sort of try to cover everything generally, as opposed to anything in the specificity of it.
So do you feel like there maybe needs to be a little bit of rewrite of the resolution, subject to, like we've had in the past where I worked with staff to rewrite a resolution but did not come back to the board? We all voted to. I mean, would something like that?
Something like that would be perfectly,
And
I
it,
think
we would
really
still
be
approve
helpful.
it
Yeah.
with the condition that the resolution includes some rewording for
Yeah.
clarity.
Yeah, yes.
I was wondering if, Stephen, did you have any comments? Yeah, I thought he would. Yeah, let's hear from Stephen. State your name again.
Stephen Keelan, the author of the report. There are so many wonderful layers of history, but what's there now from the street is the David Christian design. And so when I was doing this, I think even if Easter at Williams and Wexler and Harrison had never happened, that design still is artistic and significant and would classify this as work of a master. So in my point of view, that is really what you're looking at. I think it's a terrible flaw the city of Palm Springs doesn't recognize interiors, unfortunately, but I don't have control over it. But I'm glad that at least it's being acknowledged now in the, it's going to the
Okay.
city council.
So-
And yeah, above everything else, it's a cultural site more than, that's the essence of why this is critically important to this community.
Yes, I agree.
But we're not designated essentially as a cultural site. We're also including the architecture
We are.
as well.
It's
Yes.
there were three, and that's two of the three
Yes.
criteria.
Right. Any other questions on these?
While you're here, yes, the landscape is called out here. And again, I looked for specifics about the landscaping, which seemed to me to be, some of it is from the 80s, some maybe earlier in terms of the mature palm trees. It's not clear what that would be, but the rest of the landscaping seemed to be very contemporary. And my question is, there was no designer called out?
No.
The architect, Christian, I don't know if he had anything to do with it or not. But again, we're being asked to designate this as historic. And again, here it is in the resolution under a single column, if you will, that we may or may not have designation over. And landscape generally isn't something we have designation over unless it's a Garrett bow or there's something that is there to be very specific and hang your hat on. So, I mean, desert planting, reinforcing integration with Palm Springs context is so general, I don't even really know exactly what that would be, and so on and so forth. Any comments?
Well, no, I didn't find a landscape architect involved, and I think most of those palm trees were added in the 80s because you can transplant mature palm trees. There are a couple of, I think, Chinese elm at the far
Yeah.
east side, which, it's all conjecture. I imagine they were planted around the time the Wexler and Harrison, or maybe to shade that patio, but we can't be sure. But from the earliest photos starting in the 80s, it was a desert landscape, not very interesting, but always part of the context of it.
Sarah? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish.
I mean, do you feel that the landscape is worthy of designation?
Well, if someone wanted to come in and plant, it's not that it's going to happen, but grass and hibiscus or something, or something entirely different, then that would be something that should be a red flag, or at least something that should, this will at least say, well, this is the context that it has been.
So, I mean, Sarah, would changing the landscape even be flagged for a major alteration?
As a site change, it would come through our office and we would take a look at it, just to make sure that there aren't aspects of it that are not compliant with the existing nomination. So if there were landscape features called out, we would check to make sure that it is compliant with that, as well as making sure it meets water efficient landscape recommendations and requirements for the city.
I mean, as it stands now, these particular bullet points under landscape integration would represent to me something that needed to be followed. And again, is that what we want to set in stone?
Are those pulled from my report, or is that?
Yes, they're taken directly from your, in other words, spherically trimmed shrubs as uniform landscape elements. Again, there isn't a plant list. We don't know much.
Are there some things like the palm trees or, that we could include and take out, leave those in the report as a
Yeah,
discussion
of
of the
course.
landscape, but then temper the landscape features in the resolution to be something that would actually be something that you could handle if somebody came in and wanted to re-landscape?
Well, I think what's here right now is something that would be not helpful for staff or anyone else reviewing reviewing a request, for instance.
So if we were going to revise the resolution, could we add that we revise the language under, probably more specifically, criterion 1 and 3, as well as contributing features as they relate to the landscape?
So I think I had some notes here about criterion 3, Criterion 3, with a concluding statement specifying that it is the last phase that we're looking at in terms of what is visually present on the site. What was the addition for criterion 1?
Maybe there wasn't one. I mean, would that,
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, so just for
so
criterion
do you
3.
not feel then that we would need to, like, that we can trust staff to just all revise criterion 3 then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I trust staff.
I just didn't know if you were looking at some more clarity than just that one point, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
really the landscape bit could go and it wouldn't hurt anything.
And yeah, if we want to update the landscape portion of it, if there are, for instance, there's a description of the white retaining walls defining circulation and grade changes
With
that are
architecture,
integrated
too.
into the site, and we see those in the site plan from the 1980s that we had up on the screen, so that might be a feature that's more.
Is that
relevant.
hardscape or architecture that, I mean,
Right, almost, because I would argue that the integrated planters are architecture.
Yes.
I
This
would
was
too.
designed by
Yes.
Christian and not a
Yeah.
landscape
Yeah,
architect.
we all would.
But then we also have the pathways that are in front of the temple too, that were.
I think he indicated those too.
Yeah, hardscape, I think we're good
So
with.
maybe keeping those pieces and removing some of the more arbitrary and landscape descriptions and pulling those
The
out.
generic xeriscape stuff can go.
We can do that if that makes it easier to read this document. and
well,
follow.
I just think it makes it helpful for the future.
Yeah, I think so too.
So if you are comfortable with, sorry, I can't show this on the screen, but the first 3, so xeriscape planting, gravel beds, the tall palm fronds, the spherically trimmed shrubs, we would remove all of that. And then keep terracing and grading responding to site topography, white retaining walls, redefining circulation,
Yeah,
and just keep those 2 elements.
those are the ones I didn't highlight.
Check and check. Okay, good.
So, and while you're here, and this is a question for everyone, but there's a sculpture, I believe, on the exterior, and I don't know how we've handled that, whether it was actually just called out by the architect, or whether this was an addition, and does it fall, and is it something that we need to have in the resolution?
I don't think there's very much information about the sculpture on the exterior.
There isn't.
It was
That's
put in at the time of the Christian, yeah.
Squares that
It was
are
put in at that
interlocking.
time.
I would say, I'm trying to think, I know we had one designation where the exterior art piece was an integral portion of the design, because that was actually called out as meeting some of the criteria for important individuals associated with the design. That was a very intentional designed element, architectural element of that building. In this instance, because we have limited information, I don't know if we would feel comfortable adding that on at this moment in time. Maybe if there's more information that supports.
You mean information in terms of architect's notes saying
Right,
this?
if it was
goes here?
intended for this specific location, because sometimes people include rotating art pieces and whatnot. It sounds like it was there from the very beginning, but since we don't have an analysis of that, I would feel less comfortable adding that on as a character defining feature. And if there's more information that comes up, maybe it can go in as an amendment to the resolution.
It was just a question because it seemed important, an important feature as I was looking at the facade.
I would agree, but because we have limited
I
information.
can look further, and if something comes up, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. Anything else for Mr.? Yeah, please have a seat, though. So.
Right, but that's part of encased. It's still the same as there's been changes to the school. The school? Yeah. I'm not. No, I know what you mean, but it's.
Can
It
you
is-
just repeat so we have it on
He's
the record?
saying that the school portion, which is Wexler and Harrison.
Wexler, yeah, that's what I was
um,
thinking of.
Is still original, but it really has been, there's been a heavy,
Was there a coating of stucco?
yeah, there's been a heavy facade and columns much heavier than
Yeah.
what was there originally.
Originally?
So
Yeah.
it's been made consistent with the whole David Christian
Got it,
facade,
okay.
but everything inside's the same. And the basic sort of architecture and massing in
Got it,
general
okay.
is the same, but the detail from the Alejo is changed. And we're really just looking at the Christian design as a whole.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions, Steve? No? Okay, thank you. Do we have any more discussion amongst ourselves?
So I guess, help me understand this. So would we alter the resolution to somehow verbally convey that we're talking about the history of architecture on this structure? I don't know how to put this in words, because it seems like that East Stewart Williams is kind of getting lost in the David Christian. And so would the resolution need to somehow call out that it is, you know, architecture over a period of time or phases?
Well, criterion 4 does that one, recognizing each of the architects. So that does that for each period of time, starting with East Stewart Williams. So
Was
I-
4 one? I thought it was 1, 3, and 5. Say again? Okay.
Wait, so we didn't, okay.
4 wasn't included.
No, I'm looking at 5. 4, I'm sorry. 5 was not included?
No, 5 is.
5 was. 4
Yeah,
was
that's what
not.
I meant, under 5, not 4, sorry, my mistake. Yeah, so each of the architects is discussed under there as a progression. So I don't know if that works for you, and certainly.
It does, I guess as long as somehow that's called out. I guess, because at my core, the problem I was having is that I felt like East Stewart Williams was getting lost in this.
Well, I don't think he's getting lost, because he is in the section on the architects. But I think in as much as we're trying to recognize what's there now, you know, the discussion of him wouldn't be probably in criterion 3 now, because we're trying to make it clear. And possibly, that's what I was asking is, do you feel like any of the other criteria need any revising other
Well,
than?
I mean, frankly,
3?
criterion 1, the way it's written now, the description is thin.
Sarah, can you put up the criteria again, please?
I mean, they're, just with discussion this evening and the, what we've heard, it seems to me like like, again, it's so general, and a few more specifics would be good for the record, if we're making a record.
Digging. I still, I think I would go back to maybe just have someone work with Sarah on revising the 3 criteria discussion to make it a little more robust, as well as for some clarity with regard to what we're looking at now and what is actually being designated architecturally.
So I've always, in my experience with the Historical Society, we've talked about, like Eastwood Williams won awards for his design, but it is not listed on he has a dozen buildings listed on the National Registry, and this is not one of them because it's been altered so significantly.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but sitting on the state commission, I don't know why it wouldn't have been. So how do you all feel about that? We can approve the nomination tonight with the condition that a board member work with Sarah on revising the language under each of the 3 criteria as needed for clarity and for more robust.
And I suppose that would be me.
Well, I'm looking at you, but I think you have some.
Thank you.
I think you have some very good specific ideas, and I would say you'd be the perfect choice.
I'm
But,
fine with that, and I'm fine with you being designated.
and that also that some of the language from the landscape character defining features be omitted.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
Is everybody else? Because if we're kind of good, we can go ahead and make a motion. You all right? Are you all ready to go that route?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who's going to make a motion?
All right, then I will move that we, I don't even know how to word this. Recommend to the city council that we designate Temple Isaiah as a Class 1 historic site, noting that staff is going to kind of reword the 1, 3, and 5 criteria based on our discussion. Is that adequate?
And the revision to the character defining features under the landscape.
Yes.
You got all that?
Yep.
We're good with the motion? Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
All right.
I look distressed.
And do we need to specifically mention board member Hare to do, or are we good with representation from the board?
I think so, and then
Okay.
I'll go ahead and contact.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Congratulations. Just a little technicality in the background. I think it'll be better, that the history of the building will be better represented with a revised ordinance. And I think going forward to city council, that'll be important. Thank you very much for coming. Give them a minute to. Very good. Good discussion.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
You
you.
are so detailed. My goodness.
He is.
I got detail.
I thought you were gonna sink us for a second. Oh, no.
No, that wasn't the point.
I know
No,
the point.
yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised because the interior is so Williams, on the original sanctuary. A lot of things still are there that he designed. So I'm
It is
surprised you guys.
beautiful, but we have
Yeah, I know.
no-
That's what I'm saying. You have no jurisdiction over that. I think it's part of the whole thing. I didn't know it didn't include the interior.
Sorry.
That's interesting. No, it's okay.
City of Palm Springs
Yeah.
ordinance.
Because that original sanctuary is so
It's dazzling.
beautiful.
Right.
Thank you.
We should do something to change, like interior, it's like a museum, you don't want to change anything. All right, thank you anyhow, guys, I appreciate it. I still have the hard copies in case you want it, it's what was sent Do you want, okay, you want to hold on?
Oh, he had packets for us.
Oh, you do, I'd love it.
Of the temple, not in the book.
It's exactly what you already got, but it's, colored photos.
I would, just for
Yeah, we
kind
only
of fun,
have
and
a.
Just don't change your mind after you look at it, okay? Here you go.
because I'll use it in my tours.
The interior.
Thank you.
Sounded like this.
That's a big report.
40th anniversary. This is past December.
Thank
But
you.
you can see that you can't tell, it's seamless. You couldn't tell it when we were doing this.
Sorry, we're still in session, so.
Yeah, we have to move on, yeah.
But thank you.
We have to move on with our agenda, everybody. We're moving on to unfinished business. We have none.
Bye-bye, nice seeing you.
No, Reg, I could have only done.
Okay, we have no unfinished.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to
It
call
was a
me.
done deal. There
Can
was
I
no
give you
need
my
for me
cell?
to say anything.
Or
We
my-
would contact
do it
Sarah,
Sarah,
yeah,
yeah.
talk to
You have it
and
right
Sarah.
now. Yeah, just, yeah.
Okay.
Call me.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you, bye-bye.
And we have one lone survivor. Okay, I'm going to repeat again. We're moving on to unfinished business. We have none tonight, and new business, we have none tonight. So we're moving on to reports, requests, and comments. Are there any general and brief comments or other issues of concern from members of the Historic Site Preservation Board that you would like to share? No?
No.
Okay. Staff comments, please.
No staff comments today. Thank you for being here and making sure we have a quorum.
I have a very brief question for you. Do you, since we have a few spaces, do you know, did anyone apply?
All I know is that the opening for new members closed on the 30th, and we haven't gotten any sort of information or updates regarding who's applied. I think that goes through the clerk's office, and they'll kind of go through the openings and who's applied, so we haven't received any information.
Okay.
All right, well, with that, the Historic Preservation Board will adjourn to its regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026 at 5:30 PM. We will meet here in the large conference room at City Hall, 3200 Tockwitz Canyon Way. Thank you.
Thank you.
The end.
I love when meetings go like that.
So when we did the site
Like
visit,
what?